When a data breach occurs, it can be a crisis, but if you can help and have a plan for navigating the first 24 hours, you can avoid making a drama out of a crisis. Hello, my name's Padraig Walsh, and welcome to another TDW Tech Bite. This is our series in respect of a data breach response, and today we're going to speak about the first 24 hours. We're going to speak about three particular topics, and then in later episodes in the series we're going to look at each of these in significantly more detail. Firstly, we're going to speak about the incident response team. Then we're going to speak about the analysis of the breach and assessing it. And then we're going to speak about initiating the response. So the first thing that happens when there is a breach is that a notification comes through to someone within management. If you have the right kind of systems, processes, and planning in place, perhaps because you've taken an industry certification related to managing security incidents, then that information flow should come through relatively swiftly once there's some unusual behavior happening within the IT system. Once that occurs, if it's clear that it is a security incident, or that it is a possibility of being more than simply an incident and an actual data breach, the first thing to do is to activate the incident response team, and specifically the core members of that team. This requires a clear identification of who are the relevant stakeholders who need to be actively involved from the outset in respect of a data breach incident. That information, because of the planning you've done before a breach occurs, should be readily available and to hand. So there should be the means and the mechanics of being able to involve those people immediately. At the outset, particularly if it appears that it is a serious incident, immediate thought should be given to engaging external legal counsel, because external legal counsel will be able to advise, and those communications will be the subject of legal professional privilege. This can help you later on in respect of managing legal liability. Once the incident response team has been activated, is aware of the issues, and is given guidance on taking the immediate steps that are usually outlined within the incident response plan, then you can go into the assessment phase. Here I like to think of it in terms of three letters: B, C, D. You want to assess the breach, you want to identify the cause, and you want to assess the data involved. So let's look at each of these in turn. Firstly, looking at the breach itself. You want to identify the nature of the breach, because what your objective is that you don't want to under-respond to a serious breach or over-respond to a relatively minor incident. So you're looking at getting quick, accurate information so you can make an assessment as to the nature of the breach in question, so your response can be proportionate. This should be coming to you by virtue of good information systems, particularly around monitoring the behaviors within the IT systems itself. If possible, you want to identify the cause, and particularly you want to see if the breach is continuing. What you're looking to do as soon as possible is to secure the IT systems from whatever may be occurring. And that involves identifying the cause and removing the steps that led to that breach occurring, and then trying to stem the tide of any loss that is occurring by virtue of a continuing breach. And then you want to identify the nature of the data in question. In particular, you want to identify whether personal data is involved, and if personal data is involved, the sensitivity of that data. You're also going to try and gauge the volume and extent of the data in question, and whether or not the data is stored or affected in multiple locations. These are all factors that go into the seriousness of the breach in question and will guide how you respond to it. Once you have done that initial assessment, then you're going to start looking at initial actions. And here you have to, I guess, decide and define between how you're going to respond, but there's a minimum level, which is you must comply with the minimum legal thresholds. This is usually around notification obligations. But also you want to have an objective in mind, and the objective will be different to the minimum threshold. Your objective will be to minimize the harm caused by the loss of data or by the data breach itself. And the loss will primarily be to data subjects. That's going to be the primary group you're going to look to protect, as well as the interests of the business. So that's the way of looking at it. Achieve threshold compliance, but aspire to and reach a higher goal and objective of protecting the interests of data subjects, and then secondary to that, the interests of the business, although of course there's a clear connection between those two. And in the course of that, you're going to try to achieve three things. Now, I say these things as if there's a sequence to them, but in relation to security and data breaches, so many of the timelines converge and overlap that it is very hard to be definitive about it. So that should take you to the end of the first 24 hours. At that point in time, you would want your incident response team to be activated. You would want to have done an initial assessment and triage of the security incident itself, and then you would want to have identified the first steps that you're going to execute in respect of the response to the data breach, so that you can start to secure the IT systems, fix the vulnerabilities, and consider the notifications you need to make. And that's how you avoid making a drama out of a crisis.